everybody to the March 7th County Commissioners meeting. If you'd all stand for Pledge of Allegiance and a prayer, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let us pray. Dear good and gracious God, we feel your presence with us this morning. We seek your wisdom for our decisions as we conduct the business of the county. We ask you to watch over those who need protecting in our country, and we ask you to bring wisdom to those whose greed is causing problems. We also ask you to protect those who protect us. And additionally, we ask you to be with the family of one of our own, Kelly Asher, who and be with her family as they deal with the loss. We ask these names in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you, Don. Next order of business, you had two sets of minutes that was sent out, February 7th as well as February 21st. I'd entertain a motion on that with as is or with corrections.
Brian Cotter makes a motion that we approve the two sets of minutes as presented.
Don Adams will second.
We got a motion and a second to approve both sets of minutes as presented. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 3-0. You got your claims in the packet as well. I didn't see any holds on there, Dan, okay. I'd entertain a motion on that as well.
We accept the claims as presented.
We have a motion to approve the claims as presented in the amount of $2,959,581.88. Do we have a second?
Brian Cotter seconds.
Got a second. Any further questions from the board? Not hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion carries 3-0. Mr. Adams, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you introduce a couple of fine ladies here.
Well, thank you, Commissioner Hale. The next item on our agenda is the Comprehensive Economic Development Update that's going to be presented by Ross Stovall, Rose Stovall from the MPO. Josh and I have been attending some of the meetings as they've developed this program, and she's got a nice little presentation here for you to see what's cooking. And we will be addressing some of those concerns. She brought with her the executive director of the MPO, who's busy. I mean, that's a big organization. They're all over the place. Anna Duran, we're so glad to have you with us. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioner Adams. Thank you for having us today to provide you with an update on the Central Indiana Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy. I'm Rose Scoville. I'm a principal planner with the MPO and the project manager for the Central Indiana SEDS. We have been working on this strategy-driven plan for regional economic development for a little over a year in an intense way. This is the 5-year update of the strategy. The Indy Chamber led the last strategy in 2015. Obviously, we're a little past 5 years on that, but we're working on getting back onto a regular cycle with that. The IMPO is leading the effort this time around, but our planning funding is provided in part by the Indy Chamber, part by the Indiana Economic Development Corporation, which is the state economic development agency. If anyone wasn't familiar prior to the pandemic, they certainly are now. And then we also have primary funding for the plan from the U.S. Economic Development Administration through a CARES Act grant. This way, the planning effort is being provided for the region at no cost to the municipalities, counties, or any businesses directly in the region. The 2022 SEDS is covering 8 counties in central Indiana. If you're familiar with the counties that the MPO transportation funding applies for, this is a little bit different mix. Shelby County is part of another economic development district under the EDA and is not allowed to participate in more than one district. Madison County has their own MPO for transportation purposes, but is participating in this region strategy. In 2019, 2020, somewhere late, early, you supported the grant application to the EDA with a letter of participation. And you've had Commissioner Adams and Director Dellinger participating in the planning process over the past more than a year. Later, we'll be coming back to you to consider supporting the said strategy by resolution, probably this summer. Anna and I will be convening an exploratory committee to see if we want to have a federally recognized economic development district. And then if we do, you will have to support participation in that if you wish to be included.
Got one question. Would
Yes.
that be only the area that's in the MPO right now for the county, or is that going to entail the
It's the
entire
full county.
Okay.
That
just
is
wanna
one of
make
the
sure.
differences between the way Federal Highways works and the Economic Development Administration works. EDA operates on a full county basis, so it is your entire county that is participating and eligible. Excellent question, though. So our strategy committee is fairly large, as you can imagine, for an 8-county region. We have a representative appointed by the commissioners for each region, but then we also have representatives from many of the municipalities. Everyone was invited to participate. We have business representatives, local economic development organizations, university representatives, nonprofits, especially in community development and housing, and then industry initiatives and transit organizations as well. The committee's been meeting since last April. We hosted 12 focus groups last summer, and 4 working groups met over the summer to really kind of flesh out what some of those initiatives should look like. We have initiatives and goals already developed. We're working on the implementation planning. The strategy committee did provide input into the draft document at the end of last year. Our second and final virtual town hall for the SEDS is this evening at 7 p.m. Information is available at that hyperlink on the Indy MPO's website, but that allows you to participate in that Zoom webinar. Our public comment period opened on February 14th and will close on March 16th. We've received a number of comments that we'll be addressing as we move into implementation planning. The overarching framework of the plan is around talent, innovation, and place. Talent really focuses on the people side of things as it relates to the economy, so workforce development, higher education, retaining talent in the region, attracting new talent to the region, the pre-kindergarten through 12th grade pipeline, and child care that supports people in the workforce. On the innovation side, there's targeted industry sectors, business development, small business support, entrepreneurship, and transferring technology from universities to the marketplace. We also know that placemaking is a very important part of economic development, and so infrastructure, environmental resources, development of the downtowns, housing, especially workforce housing, outdoor recreation and tourism are also part of the framework. There are 5 or 6 initiatives under each of those framework pieces. In talent, we're really looking at the pre-K through adulthood digital literacy, making sure that people not only have infrastructure to participate in the digital economy, but know how to do it. Career pathways, making sure that there's good communication between the educational institutions and the employers. Overcoming employment barriers, especially for people who have found themselves experiencing barriers to employment, and that includes people who are justice involved. We are focusing on internships and apprenticeships and some of those not formerly traditional career paths that have kind of become not traditional in the past couple of decades. Diversifying the workforce and making sure that people who are not in school are connecting to good and promising jobs. Innovation, same kind of thing, supporting the work of economic developers and the Central Indiana Corporate Partnership. We're not looking to create new organizations or initiatives that don't need to be created, but rather lift up and support those that are already doing the work. Making sure the tech ecosystem is strong for entrepreneurs, helping small businesses modernize, and sometimes that's digital. Sometimes it's as simple as better accounting and understanding their tax situation. Some small businesses are great at that, and others really struggle. My husband works for a company they're amazing scientists. Their business side is sometimes less amazing. So there's tons of examples of that in small businesses across the region. Also looking at how to get private sector commercialization of research at the university end. And then on this side, making sure broadband infrastructure is in place. So digital literacy plus the infrastructure to do what people need to do. And that's in urban neighborhoods, but also in the rural communities. Agriculture is digital. Packaging, processing, food manufacturing is digital. And the businesses that exist in rural areas also need to have that infrastructure support. And the state has some good programs. We just want to make sure people are connecting to those and filling the gaps when needed. On the placemaking side, making sure that our communities are places that people want to live. Targeting those sites that have already been developed and are underutilized right now, often called brownfield sites. Some of them may have contamination, making sure we're cleaning that up, helping support those who clean that up. Making sure that there's a range of housing choices. In some of our counties, they can't do really good business attraction because they can't promise workers, and they can't promise workers because there's no place for workers to live. You may or may not see yourself in that, but one of the things that we're telling people is you may not see yourself in every initiative in the plan, but if it's not for you, it's probably for another part of the region. And we hope everyone can see themselves in at least some of the initiatives. Also looking at water management, transportation options, and making sure that our infrastructure is resilient to disruption from storm, from tornado, from flood, all of those sorts of things. I don't know if you saw over the weekend, the entire town of Sheridan woke up without power yesterday morning. How can we help the utility providers be more resilient so that we don't have as many of those situations? So that is the really quick overview of the plan. At this time, we're not asking for anything. We just want to provide you an update so that when we come back this summer, you're familiar and know that you can always reach out to me or Executive Director Grumling with any questions that you have. Are there questions I can answer for either of you now?
Not for me. I've already went over it pretty good, but I just had that one question I wanted to make sure, because it only made sense to include the Hope County, and I know the MPO didn't, so
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure.
We're thrilled that EDA allows us to work on a countywide basis.
Yeah, that was a real plus. I want to thank you, first of all, for the immense amount of coordination, putting all these diverse and, I guess, say, essential people together for a plan that you've been working on so hard. I also want to, I would be remiss if I didn't mention our own county EDC director, Mike Dellinger, has been working with us as well. I think I saw him in here, or is he? He
But
was.
here.
He disappeared. All right. But he's been working with us too, and we're so glad to see things that will, I guess it's a regionalized plan that will assist, our future is all together. And the MPO and other similar organizations that work with regions have a lot of benefit for our county, and we're certainly appreciating what you're doing.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
This does not take over any of the work that Mike does in any way. It's finding support for him and supporting grant applications to the federal government to do the things you need to do in Morgan County.
I will put some of this information, I know it's on your MPO site, but we'll put some links on our website. If they're not there, I haven't checked that out, but I saw the meeting you have tonight, I'll get that up fast so people want to go see what's going on and get involved. Because that's where the best decisions come from. Thank you. Thank you, Anna, for being here.
Anna, would you like to say anything while you're here? Okay.
We're glad to
Thank you
have
for
you here.
coming down.
Glad to have
Thank
both you
you,
ladies. Thank you so much.
Moving right on along, court services, she's back here hiding in the back.
Good morning.
Good
Good
morning.
morning.
So I'm here today to request a grant called the Wellness Grant through the Indiana Supreme Court or State CASA office. It's up to $45,000. And this is a new grant that is stemmed from what they used to call the triage pilot, which Morgan County was a part of. So they had 10 counties in the state that did this triage. It's been very successful, so they're offering us a grant now to continue our triage. So that's what we're here to ask for.
Any questions for? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
I move we proceed with the wellness program grant from our CASA office.
We have a motion to approve the wellness program grant from Community Corrections. Do we have a second?
Seconds.
Mr. Collier seconds. Any further questions from the board or from the audience? Not hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 3-0. Thank you. I don't see Board of Health down here, Don. I'm sure, Josh, you want to speak on that, sir? I know it's just a order agreement, and it sounds like it's for the building down on East Morgan Street, but it's all yours, sir.
Yeah, Jeannie reached out about 2 weeks ago and wanted to get a new copier for their new facility. She wanted to get on the same plan that the county has for all of our other things. So she has an agreement here for Rico to do the same thing that we did, which is purchase it outright. And you all have it in your packet. It is for e-signature. And so if you guys approve it here, we'll have Kenny named as the designation signatory, and it'll come to his email.
Any questions for Josh on this? Pretty cut and dry. Entertain a motion.
Brian Collier makes a motion that we approve the request from the Health Department to allow them to have a copy machine at their new facility.
We got a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Adams seconds. All those, any further questions from the board or from the audience? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 3-0. Fiber discussion, Josh, is Chelsea, or you and Chelsea, I know, has been tag teaming this a little bit.
Call Mike up here in just a minute, but we wanted to get some direction from you all. The commissioners in 2018 implemented through ordinance an infrastructure development zone, which is simply recognize that we want to incentivize fiber to the home across the county. And so they put a mechanism in place to be able to abate that. I'm going to have Mike give you a little bit more overview of some of the options, but some people are ready to start taking advantage of this, and we would like you all to give some direction to the council of what you mean or intend for this ordinance, because I don't know that that ever happened with the commissioners that passed this. So since you guys are in place now, we want some feedback from you all.
Okay.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mike.
Good morning. See, as Josh noted, we've been talking a lot behind the scenes lately about fiber. And you've seen the RDC has put some money up to have planning engineering study it on a case-by-case basis. The city of Martinsville has a pending contract for some fiber. We've had The EDC has worked with a couple of fiber companies, REMC and AT&T, to put together resolutions to help them where they're seeking opportunities on the state level as well. But one key thing that was brought up to me was, as we passed a couple years ago, Commissioner Hale, I think you might have been on the commission at the time. So none of you, James Tannenberger and I came forth and we discussed the state statute the state statutes permitting tax abatement on personal property, the fiber that companies put in the ground. We really haven't had anybody come forth on this yet, and coincidentally, a question I had earlier was, yes, REMC, although it's not for profit, does pay personal property taxes on its fiber. It's not a C3 status that they hold, so that. They're a taxpayer for that, as would other for-profit entities would also be. So I've done a little homework this morning, and I guess where I want to stop myself here is to ask Councilor Wisco, on your behalf and ours, if there is an option in the state statute that you could either, every time fiber is to go in the ground, you could have the applicant apply for tax abatement. Or there's an exemption process that is also offered that I'm not that familiar with, and I'd ask if you, Mr. Wisco, could help us with that. Because the exemption process would allow it to be a designation one time, and then we don't have to go through the tax abatement period every time. So it would be a tax exemption versus multiple tax abatements. I don't know if you have anything you might offer on that?
Well, I don't know that I talked about it some time ago, and I don't have that with me, but as I recall, the question as it was posed to me at the time was whether or not it would expire after 10 years, or whether it would go on indefinitely until it was rescinded.
Right, an abatement.
Right. And not anticipating that this morning, I don't know that I can tell you definitively, but I have that stuff in my office, and I think I can answer from what we looked at before. It's the best I can say at the moment.
And that's perfect, because again, the comment of exemption just came to me this morning. Rather than having to go through abatement every time they put in new personal property, if we did them a one-time exemption, then that could resolve a lot of the issues of having to go through procedures. So if you could look into that, give us direction on that, we would then know how to best serve the commissioners and the council as well, and maybe just go through exemptions on a one-time status per applicant versus multiple tax abatements. And that was the question for this morning. So thank you, Josh.
So did REMC take advantage of that back when you guys presented?
No, we've been trying to, and unfortunately, as the procedure that they've been going through, they've been laying so much fiber, they just haven't caught up to themselves. What happens in tax abatement is, we could go back to when you started that ordinance, and it'd be a real headache for you and for the applicant,
Yeah.
because that's a waiver not a waiver of noncompliance. It's not like seeing a building that's got started before the abatement process technically did. There's, I think, quite a different status there. So most significantly would be if we could help them as expediently moving forward to save them the exemptions in the future. Exemptions would be less procedure for them than abatements that they'd have to come in every time they're getting ready to plan to lay some fiber. Wouldn't you, is that?
I agree. I mean, I think the question would be, what's the intent of the commissioners? Are they wanting that? Would you be granting abatement each time it was applied for? Do you think that's what you're going to do? And if the answer is yes, then why not just do the exemption? There's a whole lot less
Yes, sir.
administration involved with that.
Yeah.
But yes, we have, RMC never did apply for an abatement, but we all know that they've laid a lot of fiber.
We've gotten documents after the fact, but haven't been able to move them forward. They're slam doing what they do for a living. So if we could do this up front, then that would resolve it for everybody that lays fiber for a living instead of coming back and forth to county business meetings. So
I would not be, I would not be in favor of retroactively applying it and allowing them to, or anyone that's eligible, to apply for a refund.
Agree.
Because you're going to be taking dollars away from taxing units that they've already received.
And I'll
And
take
going
the
forward, if the property is exempt from taxation, then that's all going to be calculated in the rate setting for the taxing unit. Whereas a refund takes dollars away that they've already received, and it would be a much larger impact.
And I'll take responsibility for them not having been as expedient in what they tried to address the last couple of years. and didn't get it this far. So if we do the exemption process, then we have to go through that time and again.
Right. It would, yeah, it just all depends on what the intent is of the Board of Commissioners.
Well, I totally agree with Dan and Mike both. I think the tax exemption be the easiest, most common sense way of handling it, that's for sure, and not having to put that burden on the auditor's office going back and affecting all the other municipalities, taxing units that's already be affected if we did that. My other big thing is, this ordinance gonna be outdated July of next year. Is that something we need to do and tweak it and possibly do a new ordinance, spelling it out exactly? The tax exemption versus the tax abatement, not have to go through the.
I would urge that because as the county grows, and we've seen, we already have the impetus on a number of the public and private sector, we need to push as much fiber through our county as we possibly can. Just like a road grid, we need a fiber grid.
Yep. And I'm assuming most of these, like Endeavor, I know, REMC, I know, I think you've got AT&T, I think you've got 4 in Smithville Telephone, I think you've got 5 entities that's
One that
already
comes out of
trying to
Johnson
do it.
County.
Johnson County, probably on the east side.
Yeah, I forgot about that, yep. So that's just my 2 cents. I think July of next year, it's gonna be, need to be addressed, but I would think we'd address it and clean it all up right now is my thinking on it. I'm definitely in favor of the tax exemption though, with Dan.
So we
Other
probably need
comments?
some research.
What kind of dollars are we talking?
Don't know, because they never applied, they've never declared the costs they incurred in constructing fiber, or, installing fiber, whatever the term is.
And this is to promote them to continue to go out to the hills and the hollers
It is.
to get the
basically.
broadband on all 4 corners of our county.
It is. It's a tax incentive for them to perform for those of us in the county that need fiber in our rural areas. Money that doesn't exist today, but by allowing them to be exempt from that tax, they can just put that much more money right back in the ground.
Correct.
To benefit, yeah.
But I just know somebody will say, well, how much dollars are you thinking this is that we're exempting? I don't know.
Yeah, well, that's sort of my question too, Mike, and I'm not, it's down in
I mean, Bill's gonna
paragraph.
ask me that before the end of the meeting.
Sorry?
Bill will be asking us that. What did we exempt? You guys exempted something you didn't even know what you were exempting, so.
Well, that's kind of my question too, but go ahead. What
But
you have.
technically, you're not exempting anything yet because it would be from this point forward. on the
Exactly.
Right, well,
As of this date, you've collected taxes on all of that personal property that's gone in the ground. None of that has been abated for any provider, nor exempted for any provider. I don't know that total off.
What?
That might be them.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead and answer it.
I will estimate this to you. You're talking about the potential for, if lots of fiber is being laid in the county, there's probably tens of thousands of dollars a year that would be exempted back to the service provider, so they're not paying that tax, so they can lay more fiber in the county. And that's their intent, is to take that benefit and put it back in the ground. Oh, here's Josh says he knows the answer. You probably know.
Last year, and I can't speak for the other providers, but RMC is doing the bulk of it. As Mike said, they got the process started a little late, so they didn't make it in time for last year, so it never came forward. But it was in the low 30,000 that would have been the effect. It's pretty minimal.
Minimum. That's,
Value or tax? Okay, and so, put that in terms of the perspective, this year's taxes that we're collecting, the total net value is $4 billion, so.
Okay.
Chairman?
Yes. Yes. I will see if I can pass that along to them.
As of right now, they could apply for abatement as well.
Abatement. Any other questions for
Well,
Mike or Josh?
sort of. I'm not sure I'm asking even what I understand. I guess that's what I'm trying to clarify. It's in paragraph 2, and it says broadband services, which I understand that, but I don't know what certain economic benefits what falls under that.
That's broad language, isn't it?
Yeah, too broad for me.
That allows you to decide what falls under that.
I can decide, or we can decide, excuse me, I don't decide anything.
It hasn't specifically limited you to anything.
Okay,
So my advice would be that you ask your county attorney if that means that we therefore can define that which we want to apply it.
I think that the answer would be yes. I think I'd want to look at this, review this code site again before we make a definitive decision on that, but I mean, I tend to agree with what he says.
so that puts us still in the driver's seat as far as what is exempted.
And what I also have received information today that said to me on the back end, a number of REMCs in the county, or in the state, originally went the tax abatement route. And then they realized, to the benefit of themselves and most importantly, the end user, the consumer, the exemption route is easier because they don't have to come back to you time and time again when they want to put in more fiber to get more tax abatement. You've already exempted them up front. And so it makes it a procedure that's easier for the end user as well as the provider.
It's just basically our way of trying to
Streamlining.
promote getting broadband to all the citizens of
Yes.
Morgan County.
We want to make it as easy on these providers as we can, that they'll come bring everybody the fiber.
And it's that's why it's a small amount, so it's not gonna.
From a tax administration standpoint, the more specific that you can be in your ordinance and identifying what is eligible for exemption and what's not, will help tremendously, try to the best possible to eliminate gray areas.
Yeah, I would wanna paint
But we
this with a
need Jim
fine
to
paintbrush, not a
research.
roller.
Need to research it, find out if it takes an ordinance or if amendment to this ordinance or what. But, you know, within reason, we need to be as specific as possible as to what property, personal property is exempt.
Agreed.
All right,
And then we can take that direction to the market, to help the providers understand what you expect of them and what you'll provide to them in return for as an incentive to their effort in the county.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Josh. We'll work with Jim and you guys and make sure to see what's gonna be best for the county, so. Moving right on along, we have,
Best will be to run fiber up Woodcrest Drive.
yes, I can see that. You got a second reading for an ordinance on the emergency health order. I'm gonna turn it over to Mr. Wisco and let him go on this one.
Well, I'd be happy to try to answer any questions. This has been on our radar for quite a while. It lays out a process by which someone can appeal to the Board of Commissioners if the local Department of Health imposes a sanction for violation of orders that are issued by the local health department. In result, or the enforcement action is how it refers to it, and this is basically a response to COVID sort of issues, and they can end around and don't have to use this appellate process. They can file something in court, but this lays out a process if they do, if the local order issued by the Board of Health is in response to either an emergency declared by the governor, as in the governor declares the emergency, and then as a result, our local official issues an enforcement action, or a disaster or an order issued by our local Board of Health. It provides basically certain time they have to appeal by and how that process would operate. I'd be happy to try to answer any questions if you'll have any.
That was clear as mud, sir. That was clear as mud.
Well, I mean,
That's just adding the appeal process to what we already got.
This is
looks
just
like to me.
the appeal process.
the process.
That's how I read it.
Oh, it is.
appeal process for a limited, I guess there's a couple different scenarios, so it's not just any order the Board of Health would make, but it would be for a declared local public health emergency is determined by the local health department, and so we could look at that code site real quick, but then, or a disaster emergency declared by the governor. And both of those, if an enforcement action is issued then by the County Board of Health, this creates an appeal process for an individual that's subject to that enforcement action. If you give me just a moment, I can maybe help with that definition. Did you have a different question?
Sort of different, but well, first of all, I really appreciate, always like the appeal process to be defined, because you're gonna have somebody bellyache, and you need to find out what their steps are to remedy what their problem is. And I think this handled it in a very judicious and clear manner. I think the person that would have the bellyache would be able to say, this is how I deal with it. My problem is in applicability, section 3103, paragraph 2, and 1 and 2, and B. I don't like the word "or" in sentence 1 of that section A. It says determined by local health department or local health officer. I would prefer that to be "and."
I think that's,
And the same thing in section B. I like "and" because I like a board, I trust boards, not that I distrust individuals, but you could have an issue if you had a board and a health officer that weren't on the same page.
so you're not talking about the "or" at the end of the sentence there, you're talking about the "or." I'm talking about the
Or it says it is determined by the local health department or local health officer, and I want that to be "and."
I think that's fine.
Sure.
If you're gonna change it, or and health officer, you need to have health officer designee, because you have.
Oh, yeah, that's fine.
You have the food enforcement, you have septic enforcement, there's all kinds of codes that the health department enforces under Indiana Code 10, or 16 rather. So if you're putting "and," you're requiring both parties to participate and agree to that. And the health officer is not always involved in those type of events, because Indiana Code says health officer or their designee. So that.
So you could put,
We would be the designee involved.
you would be fine when it said the local health department and the local health officer or their designee.
I think that's up to Mr. Wisco.
I just want a board involved.
I think that makes better sense.
His change to say "and," is that what you're saying?
Yeah, he's wanting to change it "and health officer," but I think it also needs to be health officer or designee.
Okay.
Oh, okay. So local health officer or his designee or local health officer designee.
Or his designee.
Yeah, so you've got another "or," but the first "and" is for the combination of the board to work with an individual, correct?
Yeah, because the way I'm understanding, the way you want to correct that the health officer had to be involved in the enforcement in order for it to be appealed, and that's not always the case. He may be aware, but he may not be involved. You look confused.
I think I understand you. I just want, I guess you say, the issue to be determined, the emergency be determined by a board and a local health officer or his designee. I think that's where I'm going.
Okay, you're talking about the emergency itself being declared?
It says the declared local health emergency, public health emergency. That's what it reads. A declared local health, public health emergency as determined, and this is what it gets.
Just
Again,
add a little
help me
clarity
out.
to this. The sentence that Jim has in there is directly out of state code. That is what is referenced.
Oh, that's out of state code?
Yes.
So that gives a whole bunch of power to the local health official, is that correct?
Well, remember, this is a procedure If there's a
the appeal.
declaration of emergency such as COVID-19 and our Board of Health or any one of their staff were to take an action, it allows an appeal process that wasn't there before. So all this is doing is the state saying, let's
Okay.
provide a remedy at the local level, and
For an appeal.
it would come to you all. If you all uphold it, then they could take it to the courts. But this is just providing a mechanism for appellate procedure.
So we can leave the or, and it's all taken care of through the state. Got it. Thank you.
I'd entertain a motion on ordinance number 2022-7, just allowing there to be a appeal process added.
Brian Collier makes that motion with one added point. We debated on the conjunction or and now you know why I do numbers.
We got a motion on the floor to go ahead and approve ordinance number 2022-7. Do we have a second? I'll second the motion. Any further questions from the board? Not hearing none from the audience. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Collier. Mr. Wisco as well, and Mr. Mike and Josh. Solid Waste District.
Good job.
I'm gonna turn this over to Mr. Josh. I know Deb was working and was able to find what Allen County had done and shared it with us, so it's all yours.
Thank you. So this came up last year. Dan brought it to our attention again early this year that we wanted to get the ball rolling on this. And so I put together a brief memo for you, kind of outlining the steps. If bringing the solid waste board is into a department of the county, there's a few steps we have to take. The first one would be asking the council to do a preliminary resolution in favor of this change. Because our solid waste board has been in existence for more than 10 years, we have to wait instead of 3 months, it's 6 months. And so there's a 180-day period before you can hold a public hearing. In that time, we would work with Mr. Kivett to put together our transition plan. It's much easier for us than it is most counties, not most, some counties, because we already fund them out of our levy. We already treat them as an employee. They don't have outstanding bonds. Other counties may have more complicated scenarios where they have financial obligations. So for us, it'll be a very simple transition plan. 10 days prior to the public hearing, at least 10 days prior to the public hearing, we would need to put that transition plan out for the public to see. Then you could hold a public hearing and you could take action on the day of the public hearing or any day after. So that's the process to get rolling. The ordinance to make this change, again, will have an effective date, so it's not effective the day of the passing, it's the date that you designate. And so I think the plan, if you guys want to move this direction, would be to have it become effective 1/1/23, assuming Dan also would agree that that's a good change.
I'm sorry,
January 1st of
January
next year.
1, 23? Yeah. This is long overdue.
Yes, and I agree.
And that's Dan's fault, for the record.
Any other questions for Josh?
No, but I sure thank Deb for digging this up.
Yep, I do too.
Very helpful. What?
I said I dug it up the first time.
Oh, you did?
It just regurgitated this.
Thank you, Dan and Deb. Your team.
Need an ordinance, a motion to have Jim draft the ordinance up with the effective date and everything. I'm assuming that's our next move. Mr. Wisco, need a motion to go ahead and have you start drafting up this ordinance with the right effective dates and everything, I would assume.
Yes, I think a motion to proceed with that, yeah.
My question, I think, point of the process or procedure is the commissioner would have their ordinance first, and then the council would adopt an ordinance approving or
There's
a
a bridge.
resolution.
There's an abridged procedure. We don't need to do that because there's a specific code that tells us as long as we go through the transition process, that satisfies the initial resolution that we would otherwise kick off. So we can skip the commissioner's resolution. If you all are okay moving it forward, then we can put a resolution in the council's packet. And
Statute that way.
I'll get a copy of it to you.
He says, resolve it, adoption of by the county executive of an ordinance in favor of the dissolution. Then B is adoption by the county fiscal body of an ordinance in favor of the dissolution.
There's a separate code section, right? You guys can move it forward, however, if that's the case, we can skip it. If not, we'll have it, but I'll pull out the code section and show, but it's in a different location.
I think we need to have our attorney look at it.
Yeah, I'm gonna turn it over to Mr.
I
Wisco and
think
let
you
him
could
come back
make a
with it.
motion in general that we want to proceed with this, and we can report back the details. Sure.
I'll move that we proceed, and let you guys work it out how we do it.
Motion to
I'll do
approve.
it, you guys being our attorney and the auditor's office.
We have a motion on the floor to go ahead and move forward with the dissolution of the county solid waste district. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Collier. Any further questions from the board or the audience? Not hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 3-0. Josh, I'm assuming you put this together, so I'm gonna turn it over to you on the, for the department heads on official office purchases.
Yeah, this is just a simple memo, and thanks to Dan for making some modifications to it. I think the ladies in his office have had a difficult time with some people starting to submit some claims for items that traditionally we haven't done claims for, that we've provided, people have paid from within their own departments. And so Dan asked that we would put a memo before you all to clarify that that's not something that we want to change. We want to continue to not have taxpayer funds spent on things like cutlery and paper plates and coffee, et cetera.
Yeah.
And so if you guys are good with this, we'll send it out to all the department heads.
I am, and I figured they already all knew about this, so it kind of surprises me that your office is getting requests for this.
It's just a small handful,
Okay,
but we
okay.
need to
Nip
get
it.
ahead of this
Yep.
before it snowballs.
And then entertain a motion on blessing of this letter that has been put together by Mr. Josh.
I move to proceed with this blessing.
We got a motion to go ahead and.
Thank you,
approve the,
Josh, for putting it
office
together.
holders receiving this. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Collier. Any further questions for Josh from the board or the audience? I'm hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 3-0. Emergency declaration ratification. I'm assuming this is something Mr. Wisco's been working with Mr. Steve Lighty on, or?
Well, actually, this is Deb, who, in response to the snow day, right?
Oh, I did see that. I'm so sorry.
We have to ratify what we did.
What we did.
Deb's sliding into where she's got the power to cancel county employment on any snow day. Even on 80 degrees and sunny, it's snowing somewhere. Brilliant.
I'd entertain a motion on this.
Brian Collier makes that motion.
We got a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Adams. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion carries 3-0. And this is just cleaning up on that snow emergency, and I am so sorry. I forgot about that. Mr. Wisco, updates on the litigation, updates on the opioids.
Yes, is the resolution in your packet? That's okay. We can,
Don't have it.
it can,
Catch up.
I can discuss real briefly, and then we can either take it up at the next meeting or whatever you'd like to do. But the legislature has adopted House Enrolled Act 1193 that still needs the signature of the President Pro Tempore of the Senate and the governor, but other than that, it will be law. And it has accomplished the three main goals that they had, being making the distribution from the state and local municipalities more equitable. Previously, it was 85% to 15% in favor of the state. Now it's 50-50. It also, the previous version barred local units of government from participating in other future lawsuits, and that's removed. And finally, and then the direct distribution of local units of government is before, it basically gives more control to local units of government. So It's, in the view of our council in Indianapolis, substantially, if not entirely, accomplished the goals it was set out to accomplish. I spoke to him Friday, and of course, they anticipate the governor signing it any day. The resolution that was prepared includes that the resolution would become effective when that becomes effective law, so upon his signature. I asked our council if there was any one of their clients, just to play devil's advocate, that was not going to opt back in, and he said none that they're aware of. It seems to be what the attempted to do with this legislation was successful, and it would seem to me that make most sense to opt back in. And then I believe the first portion of settlement proceeds would come in April. Although I don't know if that means come in here exactly, but I think in short order afterwards.
Now, I read that, and it looked like we should opt back in if, and that's a big two-letter word, it passes as presented. When will we know if it passes that they don't make an 11th hour,
It's too late for
13th hour change to where?
Unless, and we could, that's a good point, because I've watched all last week, it's, progress updates, and even from last time it was updated Thursday or Friday to this morning, the Speaker of the House signed it. So the only thing that's left is, like I said, the President Pro Tem and the Governor signing it. So they couldn't change that bill. They could, as they do, put different legislation into another conference committee report in the waning hours. I think it's unlikely.
Okay.
We could, the version I have says, when that becomes effective upon, effective law upon his signature or something, I mean, we could certainly add in, as presented House Under 1193 or something to account for the fact that while unlikely, there's a possibility they could, in another bill in conference committee, make some change. But that's a good point.
I would think we'd definitely need to opt back in before the governor signs it, though, right?
No, I mean,
Still,
the resolution is just based upon when he signs it becoming law, which is any day more than likely.
Any other questions for Mr. Wisco? Not, I'd entertain a motion on it, or we can table it till next meeting.
For what it's worth on that, I have for you highlighted copies of the bill or copies of the bill with highlights to the important part changes. And
Was that in the email? I read the email that you sent, and then.
I think I had started to, but I don't know that it was done yet.
And that's where I'm getting that I'm all in favor of us opting in if it passes as presented. And that would be my resolution, or my motion, Chairman, that Morgan County opts in to the new bill that's being passed, if it is passed as presented.
We got a motion on the floor to opt back in with the opioid litigation, as long as it's passed as presented this morning. Second. Any further questions or discussion? Not hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion carries 3-0. The ARPA committee, old business. I know there's been some discussion about this, and I feel like we need to move on this, but I mean, I know there's still, I know I've talked to Kim about it as far as what the council's wanting to do with their 3, and I just wanted to see where we're at on it, because I know there's been some names thrown out, but what's everybody's feelings on this?
I think we need to get chugging. I don't know, would this ever be an executive administrative meeting?
You can discuss people you're considering for a board. You eventually will need to bring some of the names that you shortlist to a full meeting. You can't have an executive session.
Not executive, I just mean administrative, so. I'm sorry? So we just bring the names here? Oh, an executive. What would you guys prefer?
I'd prefer the executive session. Let's get it hashed out and then.
All right, let's do that.
Act on to the next one.
I think that would be appropriate, and we got to do that fast. This sucker's got to get a moving.
Jim, I think you've been working on this bulk user
Yes,
agreement.
and I asked if we could table that one more time. I do have a memo that is ready to send to you guys hopefully today.
And that we table bulk user agreement.
We got a motion on the floor to table the bulk user agreement. I'll second the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 3-0. Discussion on amendment, Chapter 34, the Code of Ordinance concerning the emergency management.
That's me also, and that's the same, unfortunately, request.
Motion on that to table that.
We table?
Do we have a second? I'll second the motion. All those in favor of the motion tabling the discussion on Chapter 34 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 3-0. Tort claim. In the pack. Heavily involved with 4 of them on this one.
What's that?
Heavily involved with 4 of them in this collision. Oh, my God. I'd entertain a motion on that. If you guys want to pass this on to the insurance, I'm assuming.
Brian Kyer makes the motion that we pass the litigation on to our insurance.
We got a motion to pass the litigation on to our insurance provider. Second by Mr. Adams. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion carries 3-0. Mr. Adams, for the good of the cause.
Well, I'll begin with bicentennial information. The planning for the September meeting is going to be, has started with the Waverly Park meeting. And if anybody's interested in the county getting involved, be sure and get a hold of Valita or me or Kenny, because they're starting to work on that event. There's also ongoing things with the bicentennial, which we've discussed a little bit about the missing plaque that showed up. And we've got kind of a location over where we'll put a date on the event of the final thing, but we will be placing that on the courthouse grounds at a date to be decided. And that's about it as far as the good stuff. And there's all kinds of good stuff going on with the bicentennial. Just keep involved. Oh, that reminds me. If you want to be more involved with the bicentennial, my email's available here. And let me know. We're going to be meeting. We meet the second Thursday of every month, and we'll probably meet the second and third for a while because we've got a lot of things on our plate.
I have a question along those lines. Sure. We need direction in the auditor's office. We've received our first request to expend the county money appropriated for the bicentennial. We need to know whether or not you want to designate one of your commissioners as approving those, or if you want those to come before the board to review before we spend the money. What do you want to do procedurally?
Procedurally, I think the easiest would we designate somebody to sign the invoices.
Well, I need the board to make.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I mean, we assign
That's what
somebody.
the board decides to do.
Right. So, yeah, I think that we could do that right now, I expect. It would be because we've got some invoices coming.
Okay, well, you're chairman.
I'd entertain a motion on that.
I make the motion that Chairman Hale can sign off on the bicentennial
Be fine.
claims.
We got a motion on the floor that myself will sign off on the bicentennial request.
And I will second.
Second by Mr. Adams. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 3-0. Got a couple of things myself. I just got the hold harmless agreement Friday from FDIC. We do have them locked in to coming down with the Fire Department Instructors Conference the week between April 21st to April 30th. We've not nailed down the exact date that they will be here, possibly even 2 days of training. So it's exciting being able to bring them back down. They will be doing things a little different this year. from what they have in the past, but it's gonna be it's gonna help county tremendously on our match dollars for our FEMA grants. So I'm looking forward with that. Also, been working with national organization, and I'd brought Brian Hauser down here a few months ago. It was last October, November sometime. But they're wanting to partner with us on a big, they're a national organization. They do a lot of bike races. They actually do kind of like triathlons, marathons. What they're wanting to do is partner with Morgan County and Old Town Waverly Park. The 5K race would be up there in Marion County, starting off with Southwest Way Park. They'd jump in the canoes, come down to Waverly with the canoes on the rowing part. They would have the bicycles all ready for the ride part going back to Southwest Way Park. So I just kind of like to have the blessing from the other commissioners that we could host them. It's a great organization. They do several in the state already, and it kind of puts us in the national spotlight with this association by being able to pull this off. So I just kind of like a consensus to move forward with working with Brian and them to do this. So.
I think it's great. Promote the area.
That's the way I look at it.
Like fun.
Jim, a consensus good enough on that, isn't it?
I'm sorry.
I mean, a consensus is all we need for right now to just keep moving this along, partnering with this organization to put on this event.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
I approve.
That's what I need. Anything else needs to come for the good of the county before us? Yes?
Gentlemen, and I keep teasing Deb that the executive session to discuss misconduct, it's her fault. That's obviously a big joke because she is the best. Mr. Collier, Mr. Adams, and Mr. Hale, I want to speak about two things. The first is a complaint. Many of you may not know that I had a serious injury in August. Mr. Collier knows because he was the first one at my door when I called 911. I was hospitalized. I was in Grand Valley Rehab for over 30 days, and I still have balance issues, although thankfully I didn't need surgery. Now this morning, I left my building at 11 North Jefferson Street. I walked west on Washington. I turned north on Main, and at the corner where Roxy's church is, I face the dilemma I always face. I cannot possibly climb the curb catty corner from Roxy's church. It's this high. If I cross to the west to Key Bank, I can do that, but I'm faced with the same curb when I turn south. If I said north earlier, I meant south. And then it's the same problem if I cross from Roxy's Corner north, but on the east side of Main. Your curb is Mount Everest to me. Why? This is what concerns me about government. Somebody didn't communicate properly. I don't know why that curb's so high. I think it probably has to do with DHS stuff. But in any event, I was compelled to walk in the street, until I accessed the place that goes, I mean, it's not on the corner, but it's a little bit south of the corner. That's where I accessed. If I hadn't made that choice, I would have had to go on west and get to your parking, which is across from Key Bank. So that's something I'd like you guys to look into because I think it has to do with county, city, but.
It absolutely is city. Have you already addressed the city with this?
I have discussed various things, but I'm going to just come right out and say, and Mr. Wisco knows this, that there are certain administrative people sitting in City Hall who don't want to be bothered with little problems. I'm not Roger's group. Okay, we'll move on to the next thing. So DOC did a survey in 2019 regarding the need for new facilities. I, for one, am opposed to building a building to the west of us here. I'm all for the fairgrounds building, wonderful idea, fabulous, but we now need to reassess the need for another building. If Soil and Water, Purdue Extension, and others are going to be moving out to the fairgrounds, we need to reassess the usage of this building. Now, at the Martinsville Council meeting 1 week ago, Josh said that they had discussed the needs of the judges. I thought, the needs of the judges? Well, I remember when the judges were in this building. I remember when they were at the jail because of the bad air at the courthouse. It was dangerous, bad water. They don't need anything more than their $100,000 salary. They don't need anything more than the excellent staff that they have. They want it. Oh, is this because there's grant money for criminal justice complexes? I mean, I'm concerned about the bond market, Brian. It's not what it was in 2019. We don't, to me, it feels more like 1929 with what's going on in Russia and oil jumping $12 overnight. It is not 2019. And I know there are many people who believe that government overreach is a huge problem in our nation. In Russia, obviously, but you can't really call that a government, can you? So my perspective is that elected officials and administrators are so caught in their bubble of planning that they don't really know the needs of the common citizens. And so I ask you, and I will be at the council meeting tonight, I ask you to reconsider the plans to build a building to the west. I understand that more parking is desirable. Mr. Collier, it seems that at the meeting Monday night, you weren't sure about the number of parking spaces that a parking garage would provide. Is that correct?
No, they're two different numbers. The parking garage will allow us to have more.
How many would the parking garage have?
280.
About 280 to 300 for the garage, and then if you purchase, is it 9 properties?
7.
7? Now, I had a discussion with Josh Friday, and he said that you, Brian, and he do not want the parking garage.
Pardon?
That you and Josh do not want the parking garage. Is that correct?
It's not that I don't want it. If I cannot build out, we will build up.
Well, let's discuss the number of parking spaces that are...
If you're going to build up with the additional cost, you might as well pay for the extra spaces. That's planning, that's wise use of your tax dollars. We've not invested in ourselves in years and decades. We study about it, we talk about it, and then we do nothing. The city today presented a situation to the Drainage Board on developing 280 more homes. We will have the need. We are going to grow.
I don't question a need for more parking spaces. I question the fact that Mr. Messmer at the meeting a week ago said that they had spoken to the judges about their needs. Drainage, I'm with you. A new building? The Indiana Court of Appeals is so small that when I did an oral argument, it's kind of a hometown thing where the judges invite their 5th grade students to come in. I had to do the argument in the Indiana State Supreme Court room, which was a great honor because it is the oldest continuously used state Supreme Court room in this nation. So if the Indiana Court of Appeals can function in a courtroom that has space for maybe 20 people to attend, then I think that the judges of this county should realize that there are needs that people have. I agree, drainage is a need, absolutely. We don't need a new building to the west. That's my opinion, and unless you can give me a good reason why we need a building to the west, then I'm gonna go to council tonight and I'm gonna say, listen, reconsider what the priorities are. Reconsider about what's most important. Let's talk about what's essential. And it is essential to plan. I took a class in my master's class at SBE on strategic planning. What other kind of planning is there, Brian, other than strategic? If it's not strategic, it's not really planning, is it? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'd entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
A motion, all second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion's adjourned. I will let you know on the bottom there, our next meeting is the 21st of March.